Joining me now is author of international bestsellers, including his latest, The War on the West, Douglas Murray. Douglas, let's start with this bit of fun featuring US Vice President Kamala Harris and Hollywood actress turned TV host Drew Barrymore.
Been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now. But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country.
Your response, please.
God, it's grotesque, isn't it? America doesn't need a mom. It doesn't need a mom figure. It needs an effective president and vice president. Kamala Harris has been tasked whilst in office with a number of very important roles, such as securing the southern border, and that would secure American moms across the country. She wasn't able to do that. And so now we have this kind of mouthwash from the Democrat supporters in the celebrity class who pretend that actually Kamala Harris, who can't do the jobs that she was assigned to do, will do a job that nobody could perform and nobody should perform.
Well, it is the most cringy bit of footage I think I have seen all year. And unfortunately, I see a lot of cringe footage, so that tells you something. Now, let's get to more serious stuff. You wrote a superb piece on the war on our civilization. You note that ours is possibly the first civilization in history that is taught to despise everything that is ours and venerate anything that is not. Tell me what the BBC have done. What have they done in this regard?
Well, Kenneth Clark, Lord Clark, did this extraordinary series, many viewers will know, in the 1960s called Civilization. It's a 12-part series, and astonishing. It's called Civilization, A Personal View. And it's an astonishingly erudite and informative and entertaining series in which Clark gives this amazing panorama of the dawn of Western civilization right up to the present, and then gives his own thoughts about that for the first time in the whole series. It's a magnificent work of television. Most people regard it as being, the gold standard certainly in educational, informative programming. It's being reissued at the moment. And the BBC's done a couple of things. One is it's given effectively trigger warnings, saying that the series betrays attitudes that are of its time, and which is such a banal thing to say. I mean, everything has the attitudes of its time to some extent. What's the point of saying it? And the other thing it did was to commission Mary Beard, the left-wing academic, to do a sort of framing of it beforehand, in which she, among other things, criticized Kenneth Clark's work for being too Eurocentric. And as I pointed out in the Telegraph, this is such an uninsightful and such a banal accusation itself. Of course, somebody from Britain or Europe is likely, first of all, to look at the world through the eyes that they have. I mean, it'd be very strange if Kenneth Clark had done a series called Civilization, which was centered on looking at Chinese culture through the eyes of a Korean. I mean, it's of course there'll be some extent to it. I mean, everybody sort of reflects the culture they're from to some extent. But of course, it's not just that. It's the accusation that anything Eurocentric, Western-centric is somehow especially bigoted. And as if we'd be better off if we all looked at the world through African eyes or something like that. And of course, it's to forget the fact that one of the remarkable things that Kenneth Clark shows in his series is the way in which Western civilization not just succeeded, but why it succeeded and how it did so, by the skin of our teeth, as he says in one episode. None of it is simply sort of resting on laurels or anything like this. I mean, it just shows such a fantastically inane desire, as I said in that piece once again, to always celebrate something if it's not ours. But if it's ours, you have to denigrate. You know, if it's Western civilization, you've got to do it down. You know, celebrate the great mosques, don't celebrate the great cathedrals, and so on.
I do wonder whether other cultures are behaving in this manner. Well, I know the answer. They're not. And it just seems to be suicidally stupid to go down this road. Why would you behave like this? And you also note that the government's own counter-terrorism advisors a few years ago, they had a list of books and television programs that if you owned those, you know, it could be a sign that you were radicalised at some point. And Kenneth Clark's Civilization was on that list. C.S. Lewis was on that list. And, of course, your books are on that list. I mean, what does that say about the attitudes? And this is a Tory government, and this is their terror experts coming up with this nonsense.
I know. I mean, you put your finger on it there, Rita. I mean, you know, 14 years of Conservative government and that sort of thing still happens. Yes, Lord Clark's Civilization was on the list of suspicious items that somebody might own. I was very proud to be on the list along with Kenneth Clark, C.S. Lewis, A.R.R. Tolkien. I think it was, as so often, the banned list was the only list you'd want to be on. But I mean, no, but I mean, it's serious because it is a reminder of this fact that some of these sort of so-called radicalization and counterterrorism sort of experts have drawn a line around our civilization, which is far, far too close in to the heart of the civilization. I mean, if you want to designate somebody a potential Islamic extremist, you better have all your ducks in the row. You better have all of your evidence to hand, and so on. But if you just want to say somebody is a sort of nationalist extremist or something like that, all they got to do is to like have some of the great works, which I'm excluding mine, but I mean some of the great works of literature in the canon, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Kenneth Clark. The idea that this should be suspicious, no, ownership of such things should be celebrated. This is some of the best thought and creative work that we've produced. And why do we, instead of celebrating it and in fact sort of drawing these suspicious lines around it, why do we not venerate it? Why do we not celebrate it and say to people, if you'd like to be part of this civilization and you want to contribute to it, you're welcome to. It's not just for one group of people, it's for everybody. But no, we can't seem to do that. So we have to do the chest beating, we have to do the self-flagellation, and we have to do the destruction in the end of everything that's best.
Now, you also wrote this week about the International Criminal Court, which is hell-bent on accusing Israel and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of war crimes. What will be the impact if this eventuates, if a war crimes case is brought against a democratically elected leader? And also in Israel, the key Middle East ally of America, Australia, Britain?
Yes, it's extremely serious. I mean, I very much hope that it doesn't go ahead. But I know that Prosecutor Khan at the ICC is trying to push for personal prosecutions against the Prime Minister Netanyahu, against the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and probably the head of the IDF. Of course, there are several things that are appalling about this. One is that this is being done without any fresh investigation and with no new evidence or anything like that. It's a political prosecution, attempted prosecution. The second thing is that this would be the first time that the ICC at The Hague would have come from a democratically elected leader. And I believe that that is an extraordinary step. There are some people trying to use The Hague to get Vladimir Putin. I mean, it's deeply symbolic. I mean, you know, good luck getting him out of the Kremlin and into The Hague. But, you know, Putin runs his country as an unelected dictator. He goes through a farce of elections every now and then. But to go for a democratically elected leader, and in a country with a citizen army, a head of the army, would be extraordinarily unwise. And one reason it would be unwise is that I think that the ICC will once again destroy its own legitimacy. I'm not a big fan of the ICC. I don't think that Britain, Australia, America, I don't think we should be signatories to these things. I don't think that any foreign court should judge our elected leaders or our soldiers. That's for our military, that's for our governments, and indeed that's for the people. There are some people, particularly Republicans, who have in recent years started to think that the ICC is a useful tool. If the ICC brings this case against Netanyahu and others in Israel, it will be a very significant shot in the foot for that institution, because they will turn potential friends rightly into enemies. So we'll see. It might be headed off this week. If it goes ahead, expect kerosene to be thrown over the fires that are burning, and sometimes literally, but that are burning in American college campuses and in Western cities. All of those malcontents and maniacs and others will think they have the best possible excuse to go and riot and shout and gibber and hound down Jews more than they have been already.
And it will set a dangerous precedent as well, I think. Douglas, before you go, you completed a documentary. I don't know where you find the time, but this is a really important issue that gets overlooked too often. It's America's drug crisis. And you say in the name of compassion and progressive politics, we're seeing a very permissive attitude to drug use with some devastating impacts.
North America now has the highest rate of opioid use of any region in the world.
You go to a spot like this, they give you a shot of fentanyl in the morning, and you come in the night and they give you a shot of fentanyl at night. Fentanyl.
Fentanyl takes the life of an American every 5 minutes.
Immediately that she had been poisoned with fentanyl.
Fentanyl is now found in recreational drugs like cocaine and even weed. With hundreds of thousands of Americans dying every year, the question remains, how did we get here?
Douglas, how did we get here?
It's astonishing. I urge people to watch the documentary. It's just under half an hour long. It's an astonishing story, Rita. I mean, the fentanyl crisis has exacerbated the existing American drug crisis, but you know, this is now leading to almost 110,000 overdose deaths a year in the US. And that by any normal routine should be regarded as being an epidemic that has to be cracked down on. The short answer is the ease of the drug supply and the lethality of the drug supply. Mainly in America, the culprits are Chinese-made synthetic opioids, which come through Mexico. And it's true that some of the Mexican cartels seem to be able to make these synthetic opioids themselves now as well. But it means that the drugs that are making their way onto the American market are infinitely stronger in their potency and their potential lethality than any drugs that have made their way onto the open market before. And you just see in city after city, I mean, I concentrated particularly on New York and Philadelphia. I could have done any number of cities in the US, sadly. You just see sites that, I mean, I've not seen outside of war zones. And, you know, I just, you know, I say it's not a partisan documentary. It's just a desire to say to Americans and others, just wake up. Don't think this is normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. You should be losing so many of your citizens to these horrific, addictive and potent drugs. So yes, I urge people to watch it, but it's pretty tough viewing.
It's tough viewing, but important. And I would urge people to have a look. You can see the full documentary on X and YouTube. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Great pleasure to see you as always, Rita. Thank you.